So welcome everyone. I'm Lemont Chambliss. I'm one of the co-organizers of Tampa Bay Agile. I'm also an Agile coach and Scrum Master for Catalina Marketing. Along with me is my wonderful co-host, Julee Everett, VP of Product for Clearly Agile. So today we're going to be talking to you a little bit about stakeholder management. So stakeholder management is a big part of what we do today. No matter what role you play, whether that's coach or Scrum Master, you might have to negotiate with a team member, or you might have to negotiate with stakeholders. But today we wanted to narrow that focus down to one specific aspect of stakeholder management: negotiation.
Hey, Lemont. Thanks for stopping in.
Hey, no problem.
As you know, I just got out of a meeting with our other managers where we were able to decide who is going to be eligible for their promotion. And I'm really sorry to tell you, but you didn't make the cut. This year, performance has been really low, revenue is down, and frankly, Lemont, I expected more from you.
I'm sorry we didn't generate the revenue we expected, but man, I've been working nights and weekends trying to make these other goals. If I don't get a raise, I'm out of here.
Well, I don't know what else to tell you. I mean, maybe you should start looking for another job.
So ouch, right? So what you just heard is a situation that, if not all too familiar, is probably all too plausible. A negotiation where the stakes are high. We don't negotiate enough when the stakes are low, so when the stakes are actually high, we become flustered or wrapped up in our emotions. Today, we'd like to share some techniques with you that we've been working with. So let's see what happens with the same conversation after I've done a little bit of preparation.
Hey, Lemont. Thanks for stopping in.
Hey, no problem. Man, based on all the progress we made this year, such as stabilizing the product and growing the customer base, I'm looking forward to discussing what's next.
I wanted to have you in because I'm sure you know we had our management meeting and we were able to decide who is eligible for their promotion. I'm really sorry to tell you, but you did not make the cut. This year's performance was low, revenue is down, and frankly, Lemont, I expected more from you.
Well, we set a plan towards promotion, and it sounds as though you think I didn't deliver as much as others who were eligible.
Yes, as I said, revenue is down, so we had to make some really hard decisions. Clinical is the only department that is approved for promotions this year.
That sounds like my work isn't valued as high as clinicals.
No, that's not it. We have to keep our numbers up. So really, that's how the decision was made. I'm afraid that I'm going to lose you and other good people.
It sounds as though you think this might be unfair, or worse, I might walk out over this.
Yes, that is what I'm concerned about.
Well, I believe in this company, and I know my efforts will help the company succeed long term. I'm willing to take the title and equity in lieu of a raise.
So that's a little bit of a different outcome. So let's switch gears for a second. All too often, people rely on common approaches like ultimatums that work well in one set of circumstances but fall short in others. Why do these approaches fail even when logic or past experience indicates they should prevail? The answer lies in nearly 2 decades of Harvard research with a Nobel Prize winner named Kahneman. Kahneman proved who all things suffer from cognitive bias, and that people are rational beings. What that means is the feeling is a form of thinking. He wrote that people are neither fully rational nor completely selfish, and that their tastes are anything but stable. So while Kahneman was busy with his Harvard research, there were some high-stakes scenarios being played out that proved his theory in different ways: FBI hostage negotiations. After failures like Ruby Ridge and Waco, the FBI had to change the way that they were approaching negotiations. A man named Chris Voss was finding success at taking different approaches. For the same reason that Kahneman was demonstrating through his body of work, Voss wrote, "There was no denying that some hostage negotiations were anything but rational problem-solving situations." These two highly respected institutions, the FBI and Harvard researchers, did get a chance to collaborate. Today, we're going to take the time to introduce a few of the concepts laid out in Chris Voss's book, Never Split the Difference.
So we're a big fan of Chris's work. Lemont and I both have kind of dove into this body of work as we were talking about improving our own negotiation and persuasion skills. We love this quote here that Chris says, and this is what really inspired this presentation. "In my years as the FBI's lead international kidnapping negotiator, I learned an important fundamental lesson. Hostage negotiation is often nothing more than a business transaction." And we were really thinking about how many times in our regular day-to-day work, particularly in the product world, you're doing some kind of negotiation. But we don't do this on the on the norm, right? We're always doing negotiations when emotions are high. We know from the research that when emotions are high, people do not act rationally. And then we don't come out of the negotiations feeling very good about ourselves. So today, we're going to just keep narrowing this field and make it really tactical to be able to demonstrate and apply some of the techniques that we found the most intriguing out of this book. So let's get started.
So there are plenty of tactics laid out in the book, but we have time for just a few. We've picked 5, but we hardly encourage you to explore the rest if you get a chance to read the book. So the things we'll be talking about today are active listening, labeling, open-ended questions, getting to yes, and non-cash offers. So the first of the 3, active listening. You can think of active listening as mirroring. Mirroring is essentially imitation. It can be done with speech patterns, body language, vocabulary, tempo, and tone of voice. It's a sign that people are bonding, and it helps you establish the kind of rapport that leads to trust. For our discussion today, the mirroring we're focused on is the repetition of the last 2 to 3 words of your negotiation partner.
So like active listening, like mirroring, another thing that Chris Voss really points out is the value of labeling. And this is something that we'll be able to practice and show today. Labeling emotions is a way to diffuse them. And you might have heard this already. When you call into customer call centers, and you're frustrated, you might hear people mirroring you or repeating what you're saying, because we know that that's a proven technique to diffuse emotions. So we're going to practice that a little bit today. And you'll find out it's a little harder than it might seem. But this is what Chris Voss calls a time-saving emotional hack. It's this really quick ability to separate the people from the problem. So keeping that science in mind, that especially if in a high charge situation, that we want to separate people away from the emotion of it. And so this is one of the things that we'll demonstrate in practice today. So it's called tactical empathy. And it's about getting into the mindset of our counterpart and really hearing what's behind their feelings and what they're saying, so that you can increase your influence in all the moments that follow. So it sounds easy. A little pro tip is when we're labeling, we don't want to use the word I. Does anybody have any comments about why we wouldn't want to start with I? Anybody have any ideas?
Generally, it's better to use the we. Like more inclusive, and it makes I kind of creates a division between the self and the other, as if we're on different sides rather than working together, I guess.
Yeah, that's a great point. Anytime you're using the word I, you're putting the focus on yourself. And so we're going to explore ways to start to use labeling, and you might use phrases that sound like it sounds like you're feeling this, or it seems like it's more complicated. Any time that we are trying to label, we're trying to keep the focus on them and their what they're feeling and what they're experiencing, and not on ourselves. It doesn't mean you can never use I, but it's a very judicious and intentional approach. The last tip is when we use labeling, we want to muster the most neutral tone that we can. We want to just label the emotions to diffuse them without putting a lot of any emotion in our own voice.
So open-ended questions. Most of you are probably familiar with open-ended questions, questions that cannot be answered with either yes or no. Building off of that tactic and labeling, when we enter into negotiations, it's not just to get others to believe what we say, it's also to get them to stop disbelieving. The questions help maintain a control of the conversation by suspending that disbelief. So when I talk about open-ended questions, we want to use what we used to call the newspaper questions. Can anybody tell me what those are?
Who, what, when, where, why, and how.
Excellent. Any others? Just kidding. So now that we've given you a few of those tools, and actually the first three, and they're highlighted on the screen, we'd like to invite you to use the chat where you hear this tactic being used. So we're going to play another script for you, but this time when you start to see these things, active listening, labeling, open-ended questions, I'd like you to go ahead and put in the chat what you're hearing.
Lemont, guess what? Acme Management just signed that deal we've been waiting on.
Really? That's awesome. I'll make sure to leave some time in this week's refinement session to go over it. What?
We got to complete this by next sprint.
We got to complete this by next sprint.
Yes, there's a lot in it for us if we can pull this off in the next 4 weeks.
4 weeks?
I think we can get the $150K for this project plus the other 3 projects that are in the pipeline if we're able to achieve this.
That sounds like this could be huge for us.
Having a client commitment like this is very rare.
I guess we need to make them happy enough so that they will commit to this future business, huh? There really isn't a choice for us, is there?
No, unfortunately, I don't think so.
Well, I'm not sure with everything that we have in place that we can currently hit that date. But how can I help make this better for the company?
By hitting that date.
Okay, how am I supposed to do that?
I don't know. You got to figure that out.
Well, what if we finish what we're working on now, rearrange some priorities so that we can get Acme on the schedule? I think that'll complete the full Acme project in about 6 weeks. We could possibly provide them with the MVP on their original date and assess their feedback with a promise to deliver the full package on the new date. Do you think that could work?
I think that's a good compromise.
Okay, so let's do this. Let's work on planning out the MVP with an eye towards the full delivery 2 weeks later. That sounds like that'll be a positive outcome for both of us, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, so thanks for using the chat. Let's pull out a couple of things. It was great. I love the interaction there. Anything come to mind that you want to pull out?
I would say that I was impressed with the redirect back to we at the end, because it was amazing when it was all about the money. She was like, us, we. And then he was like, well, what about the work? And she was like, you. And then he redirected back to we. And then she bought into the we.
Nice. Yeah, I like that. A couple other, thank you. Thanks so much for that, Nichelle. There was some labeling happening in there. Anybody remember any of the labeling? I saw a lot of you marking that as it was scrolling through. Do you remember him saying things like, it seems like there's a lot more to this, stuff like that?
Yeah, he used a lot of auditory responses. Sounds like, seems like he used a lot of those And yeah, I think those were the two that I caught.
Nice, great.
Hey,
Any others?
Hey, I have a request. Lemont, would it be possible to show that slide that had the bullet points underneath the major headings again, so I could capture that? That one, yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
So,
I did hear the open-ended questions there too.
great. How did it feel? Did it feel like it was stilted? I mean, obviously this is a script, you know, we had time to prepare this, but how did it feel putting that into sort of some natural language patterns? Did it feel scripted and prepared, or did it feel like a natural conversation?
A natural conversation.
Yeah, so that doesn't come out of anywhere. It comes from doing some practice. And so that's what we're going to work on next. We'll keep going. Anything else from anybody before we move on? Okay, great. It's going to get harder now. That was the easy one.
That was an easy one. And, you know, this all is part of a process. And to Julie's point, it all, you know, it does take practice. So it feels natural. So it starts to roll off the tongue. So it becomes a part of your vocabulary, your vernacular. Or you can think of it as a stance for those of you who are into stances like Agile coaching. So if we want our negotiation to end successfully, eventually we have to get to yes. Well, a version of yes. Ironically, we'll start with the word no. We're going to ask our partner a question in such a manner that it triggers a no response. Why would we do that? This actually gives your partner a feeling of power in the negotiation. They've had a chance to say no. They've actually had a chance to rebut, but it's only merely because you phrased the question that way. From there, what we're going to do is we're going to invoke the rule of three. That means you're going to get the other person to agree to the same thing 3 times in the same conversation. It's very difficult to repeatedly lie or fake conviction. After your 3 yeses, summarize the points of your negotiation using a combination of paraphrasing and labeling. You know you nailed it when they confirm with the phrase, "That's right."
And the last technique that we're going to cover in depth today is called the non-cash offer. Now, sometimes in negotiation, we get really hung up on the bottom line, on maybe a dollar amount or a date, on that one thing that we feel like we have to win. What we end up doing then is starting to compromise. And what we want to get to in some modern negotiation is a win-win situation. So when you go into negotiation, you want to be comfortable with what other options might be and be prepared for them. So while you are there in the negotiation, you understand what things that you can offer and what they can offer so that you can get to that win-win situation. So we call these the non-cash offers. So instead of getting hung up on a dollar amount or a date, Bosbeek suggests to think about to avoid dealing with any of those items in isolation by themselves. So in a negotiation, pivot to things that might be just a different way to get other goods or services that are going to benefit you. So a simple example might be in a salary negotiation. If they won't offer more money, ask for some PTO. Or maybe you could ask for a conference or an educational experience, something like that, that might come out of a different bucket than a salary negotiation would. So that's a pretty simple example with salaries. In stakeholder management, it can take other forms. You want to offer something that's cheap for you, but valuable for them. Now, in product management, we often get to know our customers' problems pretty well. So perhaps you can offer a valuable feature that you know your team could do fairly quickly, and you could wow them if you could get more time for a larger effort. Perhaps there is a complimentary service that somebody could do on your team or in your company that you could add as a value add-in while the rest of the team is working on the bigger item. Perhaps you could negotiate for more time, but the same money. Could you share costs if you could use that product in other ways or for other clients? Even considering IP. Could the intellectual property be reshared? Could you find some value in leveraging that with other customers? You may even consider joint marketing or referrals for more business as different ways to bring some negotiation tactics to the table.
So we have one more scenario to play for you. This one's long, but it encompasses all of the things and all of the elements of the 5 things that we've talked about so far today. So in this scenario, you're in a national insurance company that's redesigning its product for insurance agents. The initiative started with a lot of early wins, and now there's conflict between Sharon, the stubborn stakeholder, and Pete, the pragmatic product manager.
So hopefully this feels like a pretty common scenario, but let's listen in. It does take about 5 minutes, but you're going to hear those 5 tactics. And I want you to also notice in just sort of natural language, how you might revisit things like mirroring and labeling, so that you can keep the pattern going and re-emphasize some of the things that you practice before you go into negotiation. So let's listen in. And you can go ahead and add in the chat again where you're hearing these things.
Hey, Sharon. I was just getting ready for our executive review and wanted to check in with you on how you think the Team Mimic Team Face team is doing.
Hey, Pete. I'm glad you called. Honestly, I'm very frustrated and disappointed in this Team Mimic Team Face team.
Wow, you're frustrated and disappointed?
I just feel like I'm in a really difficult situation. I don't think this team is working hard enough, and they certainly don't show a sense of urgency or understanding.
Sounds like there's a lot more going on in this situation than people know.
I saw the release chart and I was shocked. You know, I used to do this kind of work, so I know how long it should take. I don't know why this seems to be taking so long.
Well, you might be looking at the release forecast and think that by being off track, it indicates the team is not working hard enough.
Yeah, Pete, that's exactly what I'm thinking. I think you need to consider mandatory overtime for this team.
Well, we have solid data from our team that indicates that April is not a feasible date for release of this kind of complexity. We're adopting new engineering practices to combat the brittleness of our legacy systems and to make this scalable, as well as modernizing the UI to reduce the amount of clicks it takes on each view. If we can get some, but not all of the work completed by April 1st, is there a specific aspect of this project that you feel could achieve a positive outcome for you and meet the expectations of the user?
Pete, no, you don't understand. We need this to work. I need this to work. The #1 complaint is that the sales agents can't buy more time. They don't want to pitch our product if they can't get the quote to the customers faster. Our competition is eating our lunch. I have to get ahead of this.
Okay. Can you help me understand the business reasoning that is driving the release date of April 1st?
Sure. I selected April 1st because this product has to go through a series of checkpoints, including our regulators. Plus, I have a meeting with our marketing team preparing for a major campaign in Q2 because our window of opportunity is going to close as we move into the summer. No one buys property insurance in this state during the summer.
Man, there's a lot of pressure on you that's not obvious at first glance. What if we could really focus in on the UI and reduce the time to quote significantly by April 1st? You think that'll help us get ahead of the competition?
Yes, but what are you saying? The team can't meet the deadline? We just cannot have that. My reputation is at stake here, and frankly, so is yours. Are you going to be able to deliver this on April 1st or not?
Given our forecast and the clear emphasis on user experience, would you be willing to extend the deadline just so we can get a more realistic release plan?
No, Pete, I'm not ready to do that. You just need to put some pressure on this team.
So it sounds like improving the user experience is a major focus for this initiative. Providing a new UI that will give the sales agents the ability to provide a quote faster.
Yes, that is right. Can't we achieve that on time with some mandatory overtime?
Not Sharon. How am I supposed to do that? What would you have me do? If I start asking for mandatory overtime this early in the plan, we'll lose some of our best people. That's just not sustainable. Matter of fact, it's not healthy for morale. Our team's forecast indicates that we could deliver a significant reduction in quoting time by April 1st. But some of the other features, they're just going to have to wait until the next release. What would it take for you to believe the data that we have, and then trust me to lead this team to exceed your expectations?
Well, I'd be willing to look at the data again in a month and revise our release plan officially if the data still holds true. But I want your personal commitment that you will not let up the pressure on this team. If you can do that, I can probably talk to the marketing team to split the campaign up and plan a second release later in the year after we're back in an active sales season.
Okay. So can I tell the team we intend to split this into 2 major releases? One for April 1st with the goal of implementing a new UI. That'll give us the reduction in quoting time. And one later in the fall, which will allow us to do more of the heavy lifting and optimization that would accommodate a full sales campaign. That will also allow you to show more results on how this new engineering approach is benefiting the other products. And I remember from our earlier conversations that you felt like this would be a great point for you to make at the annual meeting.
I knew you'd bring that up. I could see that. You drive a hard bargain, Pete. Sure. I agree to that. Let's do it.
All
Okay.
right. So there's a lot to unpack there. What did you all put in? What kind of things came up in the chat, Julie?
Well, so one of the things that I think is one of the hardest things to practice is getting to yes. And I saw a lot of people recognizing the tactics that were being used to get to yes. Anybody recall anything or any ahas as they sort of heard that happening? Pete's getting some cheers also. Dawn's cheering Pete, right? Like I'm getting all, I know these scripts. I'm still getting tense.
I thought that Pete put out a proposal. He went from no and then built on that to get to yes.
That's great. Yeah, that was a great catch on that. Nicely done. Any other things? Somebody recognize the non-cash offer in there? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think he's he gave options. He was prepared to give options. I think that's a challenge. A lot of times I think going into a negotiation is not having enough knowledge to give options. I mean, it's great to say, you had non-cash offers and things like that, but in real life, you have to be putting your feet and have enough knowledge to have those options. And I think I don't see myself as an easy thing for me to do, but I like that part, just to be able to go in and offer the non-cash the other stuff, the non-cash options.
Yeah, nice. It really indicates like you have to go in prepared, knowing what you can offer, right? And so that's where that value of preparation comes in, because when you're in that heat of the moment, you've got these charged emotions, you're making this progress, you can feel your counterpart, starting that negotiation. You don't want to have to pause that flow and then go find out what you can do and then come back where they've had a chance to sort of, rearm and restart everything. So you want to go into negotiation knowing what you are authorized and able to offer in an authentic way. And it is something of value that can lead you both to a win-win.
I saw another thing during the process, in order for him to, because there's the different states where he started asking an open-ended question, which allowed him to chunk down and get a little bit more detail. So then when he went back into the next offer, he had some more insight to where she was thinking about the particular situation. And I caught that between the two times when he was throwing offers in there.
Nice. Okay. Anything else before we move on?
I want to add that I like that he stood firm at one part, and I think that's very important. I know people, including myself, are in certain situation, we try to recover, and so we are eager to please. And I'll do what you say. So it's good that to know that it's important to stand your ground and stand somewhat firm in your position and while you're negotiating.
It's a great point, and it also depends on your personal style. So it's even more important if you are somebody who has an accommodating style. You like those relationship building tactics. If that's your natural style, you may find that your weakness is that you are too accommodating. And so, you have to really understand your natural style and what you need to practice and how to be prepared. Because once you're in that charged situation, remember that logical mind is overrun by the emotions. So that's why it's so important to step back from here and try to look at a negotiation like a business transaction and be prepared. Is there anything you want to add about that, Lemont?
No, I think preparation is key, and to our earlier participant or our earlier commenter, I think it's nerve-wracking for everyone. And I think some people are probably predisposed to negotiation, but a lot of us do have to learn these things, practice them, and be prepared with what we're willing to offer and how we're willing to present ourselves.
Yeah, another thing that we didn't talk about was there was a lot of labeling in there. Where even though they were going back and forth, there was a lot of mirroring that was happening. So it kept them at the same pace with each other between how she was feeling and he was mirroring some of those things to make sure that she was feeling like she was being heard.
Right. I think Julie,
common languages in there, but that's a whole other topic.
Yeah, I think Julie made that comment earlier. It really is about building that empathy with your negotiation partner. It sounds strange, but the more and more we can build that empathy, the more we can uncover as we go through the steps of the negotiation.
Hey, Julie, Lemont, I was curious what you would say about the notion of, in terms of being like an agile leader, commenting on the overtime request and saying something to the effect of how sustainable pace is very important in Scrum, and making sure, checking in with the stakeholder to see that they understand that that's like if we go overtime now, that's going to sacrifice sustainability later. Do you have any thoughts on that?
That's a good point. So in your negotiation, you really want to make sure that you're keeping your eye on the prize, right? Like really what are you trying to accomplish without trying to bring up other controversial topics? What Lemont did in that situation was he addressed it and he was like, hey, what do you want me to do? That's bad for morale. So he made note of it, but he also used that in the negotiation to get her thinking about, how we could pivot from there. So what we don't want to do is go off down into a completely other conversation where we're losing the momentum of the point of having the negotiation, because you can see by this, building up of the questions and getting them into the yes, you really want to get in and land the plane. And Lemont, love to hear your ad on that.
That was a great point.
Yeah, I think it going down that path, you're right, it does kind of derail the current conversation. I was just going to say, like, that to me, it's just like any other coaching stance or coaching situations. I might have that in the back of my mind, but I'm going to negotiate from the standpoint that I'm already in, the conversation I'm already in, keeping in mind that sustainable pace is the way to go. I don't necessarily have to share that with my stakeholder, because chances are my stakeholder is not going to care about my agile language. But you're right, as a practitioner, I am going to have that in the back of my mind that we should be adhering to those values.
I liked how you threw it out, because I was listening to what her reaction was going to be, because you threw it out there to see if she would bite, and she didn't bite. She didn't care. That wasn't where her focus was, right? If she did care, that's not what she was putting on the table to talk about. And that became apparently obvious that was not a route to even, go.
Hey, I appreciate those responses. So I think that sounds good. It's just semi-amusing to me, the notion that sustainability, it would be a controversial topic, but that's good to know from your life experience that that's what happens out there.
Yeah. It most certainly is.
That's kind of depressing, but that's okay.
We promised this was not any one actual client, but this was a pretty realistic scenario that we've lived through a couple of different times. So hopefully it felt realistic to some of you on the call.
I appreciate that. Thanks.
Definitely did, Julie. I just went through this today. Just today for a go live where we were.
There were no recordings or cameras in your
No.
go live, I promise.
No, but it's just odd. Even though I've been through this, I know this work and I've done this already, and it should take less time than you guys are saying. So that was perfect. You guys did a good job. Thank you.
So that's interesting, right? Because oftentimes our counterparts are going to come back with some of those things, and it's like you got to avoid biting on those things that are not going to get you to your negotiation point. Because especially if it's something that you feel passionate about, you could easily latch on to something, and then you're off to the races on a completely different topic, and you've lost all this build-up momentum, and you were so close to getting them to yes. And so that's something that you really want to practice, not only just our personal style, but also our personal triggers. So when there's things that you know that just irritate you and you're ready to like jump right in, that's a good thing to let your accountability partner, your practice partner, if you practice these conversations before, let them know that these are trigger points for you so that they can help look for those, that emotion coming up in you or that reaction coming up in you, so that they can steer you back to your negotiation pattern that you want to follow.
All right, great.
Good job active listening, because that was like 5 minutes, so nicely done.
So a couple of anti-patterns before we get started. We want you to take these tools and carry them forward. So with that, beware of old habits.
Yeah, so this is, a fresh, newer, modern approach to negotiation. It's not your father's negotiation patterns. And so if you're used to hearing things like split the difference, we want you to really be intentional about not looking for those easy outs. And so that's why we wanted to introduce this body of work and start applying it, because, if you just split the difference, you're compromising, right? If you said, okay, well, I know that we need this in September, but I'm going to compromise from that first original day and say, well, what if we split the difference and go to June? That's still putting your team in an impossible situation, and it starts to feel like a compromise. So we don't want to, that they're in the name of the book, never split the difference. We don't want to go in thinking about a compromise. We want to go in position for a win-win.
So don't go on high. Having the other side. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, I mean, it sounds to me like, I guess I'm misunderstanding something, because it sounds like all negotiation is compromise. So whether you call it a split the difference or you trade A for B or B for C, you're trading some sort of value. And splitting the difference is just a different type of value compromise. So I guess I'm missing the point of one not being any better than the other.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. And so we're looking not for a compromise, but for a win-win. What is it that you want? What is it that they want? And how can you make both parties happy? You can still do some give and take, but that's not necessarily the same as a compromise. So there's a different set of emotions that are attached when they're walking away feeling like they fought hard and they still won something, and you are coming away from the table with the same emotion. And Lemont, you want to add anything on this?
The one thing I would add, if I remember correctly, the author's interpretation of that is it's more of a mindset. What we want to do is go in, use these tactics, build our empathy, and hopefully connect with our negotiation partner and establish, like Julie said, what's a win for me, what's a win for them. But
so
we don't necessarily want to go in with the mindset of we're just going to give up half, because, and it's kind of alluded to in that next point, maybe they're willing to give more than we were. If we go in assuming we can only get half, then maybe they were willing to give more, and we've misplaced ourselves in the negotiation. And that may not be applicable across all of them, but it's applicable across most. You were going to make a comment and I stepped on it.
No,
I put in the comments, one great way to always look at it. And if you run a business and your money's on the line, and that's what we learn in, closing sales and negotiating, it's your money. And when you think about it in that way, that you're talking about losing your money, gaining your money, that changes the whole way of thinking. And a lot of times when we're in organizations, we don't take that approach. We don't think like the entrepreneur because it's not our money. But think of you're playing Monopoly and you got the money on hand in that conversation. It is completely different. It really is. Because then it becomes a different way of thinking.
So we don't want to go on high, go on high for having the other side go first allows them to anchor the negotiation. So at that point, usually both sides have incomplete information regarding the negotiation. So I might get lucky and the starting offer from my counterpart will be higher than my best expectation. But if I don't always go on high and let that answer reveal itself, it'll be much better for me.
So an alternative, Lemont, in saying this would basically like let them bid first, basically.
If you can.
Okay.
Right.
All right, we talked a little bit about labeling already and the importance of not saying I. If you do use I, make sure that's intentional because it takes the focus off the other person. So just making sure that if you end up using that I, you can always correct it, but just make your point and move on, and then try to get back into that empathy space where you really use it. And that's where sometimes if you hear yourself going there, you can always back up, and that's where mirroring, that active listening, is a good, easy fallback to get you back in track. So if you find yourself going there, you can self-correct and just start over with some mirroring and active listening. And that sort of gives yourself a few seconds to recompose and get your mind back on track.
What's the matter with why? Does anyone know why we wouldn't want to use why?
You question them, their ability and knowledge.
That's a great point. Yeah, why questions tend to be viewed as accusations. Why most time inevitably leads to who, and that's a single point. So because of that, we want to use it for purpose and strategy or root cause only, but not directed at any one person.
Yeah, I was just going to add, because I read this last night in Find Your Why. And then when you're interviewing people to find out what their why is, they say, don't ask why. Ironically, that's because the question why is an emotional question and it tends to elicit vague or reactive answers. In contrast, asking what questions elicits more thoughtful and exact answers.
Asking those open-ended questions, even if you don't know your counterpart very well, is going to give you some indications of what motivates them. They will tell you their story. They might talk about data. They might talk about a business pressure that you didn't know about. And so that, then you can come back with labeling. It seems like there's more under the surface than we know about. And so you're really hearing and you're also lodging some different ways to understand their style and how to speak their language when you move into the next phase of your negotiation.
All right. So one of the key takeaways here is to go into your negotiation prepared. You want to write down the language you want to use, your goals, even probably your labels and non-cash offers. So that way you're prepared and you're not emotionally hijacked during your negotiation. So a lot of this work in this negotiation one sheet that you see on the screen is downloadable at Black Swan Limited. So that's the author's website. There's a lot more tools there. There's a lot of information there that goes along and supplements the book. And we encourage you to go out there and take a look.
How was your experience? Any ahas or observations by going through this worksheet?
Definitely
it helps.
Exercise.
Yeah.
Is there any team that we want to peek in on and get a little bit of an insight to how your group went?
Yeah,
You can follow along in the mural by just clicking the outline and clicking number 2-4.
Dano?
Yeah, well, it was definitely it was definitely a challenge. I mean, it was hard to think through this stuff and really come up with a good kind of strategy. It took a little while. You always have these kind of startup, what exactly is it we're doing? And then we kind of, from a team standpoint, I thought we did a great job of kind of talking through it and what exactly are we doing? And then finally, okay, yeah, I think we kind of understand now. So,
Nice.
So we went back and we looked at, okay, so we've got these two competing people that we're trying to deal with, but one in specifically for the odds. And so we're kind of thinking, kind of putting doing the empathy thing of, okay, what is a technical person really going to want to hear, right? And kind of try to adjust the what is our goal based upon that, rather than what was originally proposed. So
Yeah, you have some great labels here. I love this. It seems like you value modern architectures, automated processes. You're reluctant to accept inferior designs, predictability backed by metrics. It seems like you're really getting into like anticipating, some labels that you can use, given how she might respond.
Right.
I love that. Do you have any insights you want to pull out from here, Lemont?
Yeah, I'm on the same page as you. I like the predictability and really starting to hone in on what your counterpart might want or might look for, and anticipating those needs. A lot of times we know the other person on the other side of the negotiation, so there's probably some history that you can draw upon, other projects that you've worked on, other products that you've worked on. So don't forget those as well.
Nice. Great job. So you can see now we just gave you a taste of this worksheet, but you could see like this could take some time, and you wouldn't want to do this walking right into negotiation. So sort of the power of preparing and thinking through and having some insight into what motivates them. Anybody from the other persona, anybody from 1 or 3, even if you had technical difficulties, is there anything you want to pull out from your conversation from the other counterpart?
We were number 3. We didn't put it on the bottom. We color coded them. So there you go. I think we had some really good conversations and viewpoints as we were walking through it. One of the things that we talked about was really understanding who we were getting in the room with, of a person that is very assertive, and the product owner is not. He's accommodating. So those are complete opposites. So they were going to have to get in the zone to really be very direct and to the point with this individual. And so that was some of the things that we were thinking about as we went through this process, and we talked about it. And any of you want to share some of that? How we got to some of these things? I'm not shy, so I just talk, but I don't want to talk all the time.
Who else was in your group?
I was in there.
Any other ads while I have this one shared?
For me, it's the, listening to, the presentation early and a little practice help, but this is actually challenging for me. Barack and others have been very helpful, but it's good to have this sort of real life practice, because it's easy to see where my shortcoming is, for example, to see certain things that I otherwise wouldn't see with this kind of practice. So this is very helpful. Thank you.
I completely empathize with that. I feel like I'm a rational persuader, so I tell people I'll kill you with white papers and data, but I really have to practice what's in it for me, that emotional persuasion side of influencing. So I will often partner with somebody who I know is naturally good at it, and even if I use their words, and then I try to put it into my own words, or I bring them along. But if you know that you have some challenges, then find somebody that you can partner with, that you can pair in, that can help you push yourself a little bit.
Yes.
So no pressure, but is there anybody who would like to use this and simulate a little bit of a role play? Anybody feeling brave? So Chris, who was your counterpart?
My counterpart was the VP of engineering, which was tough for me because I work under VP of product, so I'm used to getting into his head all day. So this was
nice.
A fun exercise.
Nice. Lemont, you want to play the engineering guy?
Sure.
Okay. All right. So let's just do it for a minute or two. Let's see how you do. Which group were you in, Chris?
I was group 2.
Okay, so I'm going to bring it up. You guys can bring it up here, and hopefully you can just use these as little prompts. Let's just put a couple minutes on the clock, and let's just see if we can kind of simulate this. So go ahead.
Hey, Chris, I was coming to check on you to see how we were doing. You know, I want to make sure that we meet our deadline. I've got a lot of dollars riding on it. I got a lot of, you know, everybody, the board's coming down on me. We've really got to get this done. And I mean, we gotta get this done now.
I hear you, Lemont. It sounds like you've got a lot on your plate and you have a lot of people who are counting on you, and thus you're relying on me and my team to deliver this in a timely fashion. It seems like you have a very it seems that you value delivering on time, and you don't like surprises, and it feels like we're going a little bit off chart.
You're right. I value all of those things. You're exactly right.
So, so I mean, at a minimum, what are we trying to accomplish here?
So what we're trying to accomplish is I've got to have version 1.0 in my client's hands by June 1st.
Okay. So by June 1st, we got to have something in your client's hands. So what can we deliver in June as a minimally viable product? What value can we deliver? What must go in there?
That's a great question. I'm figuring since it's June, all of it.
Okay. As we are going through the development process, we are learning a lot that we didn't account for in the original planning. So I'm worried that there may not be some things that we can deliver by June. So I'm wondering, if push comes to shove, what are the must-haves, and what we could potentially deliver as a fast follow? What can we use on day one?
So my must-haves is my must-haves are I have to have the single sign-on page done, and I've got to have the first data aggregation done as well. So if I can get those two things, I might be able to take some pressure off of the team.
That would be great. I think we can definitely accommodate the single sign-on, and to add further to that, the data aggregation. I think that while we're in there, I mean, this would be a great opportunity to add in extra things to capture more data, to learn more about our users. So while we deliver this first release, we can learn more and improve when we're adding those additional things after June.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. All right. Great. You got a non-cash offer in there.
I'm bringing Chris with me to buy my car. That's pretty good.
You give me too much credit.
I don't know. I don't know. What do you all think? We were trying to run in the chat some things that we heard.
Awesome.
Yeah. How did you feel, at least having some preparation behind you on this, Chris?
I definitely felt more prepared. Definitely like getting to, preemptively getting into, Lemont's head, as the VP of engineering beforehand, so I can go into that discussion, prepared to speak his language, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Nicely done.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're about ready to wrap up. Is there anything that anybody else wants to pull out from the exercise? You'll have access to this mural for a while, for a few days, probably a week or so. So if you need to come back in, you can.
One of the things that was good, that part of the process that we had our cheat sheet was really understanding the type of person that we were going to talk to, and allowing us to be more mindful of it, knowing that we were going to talk to somebody that's more assertive. What does it look like talking to someone like that? And having that information beforehand was helpful. And the takeaway is get to know those people that you talk to, their style. That would be really helpful.
I think the preparation gives you a chance to really like not walk a mile in that person's shoes, but at least take a look at what shoes they're wearing.
Yeah, that's a great point.
That's a great point.
All right, I will let you or take over the share, Lemont. We'll wrap this up. Thank you, everybody. And you know, that was kind of a tough exercise. I really appreciate you getting into it. Okay, we have one tactic that we want to share with you as we leave. This is called the Black Swan. Has anybody who's read the book or is familiar with the work know what the Black Swan technique is? It's a little bit of the secret sauce. So the Black Swan technique is really getting to learn a little bit more about your counterpart before you go into it. So we gave you a taste of it. Often when we're working internally, we get to know our counterparts, but you may be in a situation where you don't know your counterpart, and it's really helpful to find out some information about how they're motivated, what are some highlights of their life. Maybe you can understand some things to stay away from in the negotiation, things that might be pivotal points in their life that were negative, or things you want to, you know, try to avoid in a conversation. So this is a little clip from the movie Hidden Figures that we think demonstrates the Black Swan technique. So just take a listen, and it's just to help us finish up.
Of America.
Mary Jackson, petition to attend courses at Hampton High School. Good morning, Your Honor.
Hampton High School is a white school, Mrs. Jackson.
Yes, Your Honor, I'm aware of that.
Virginia, still a segregated state, regardless of what the federal government says, regardless of what the Supreme Court says. Our law is the law.
Your Honor, if I may, I believe there are special circumstances to be considered.
What would warrant a colored woman attending a white school?
May I approach your bench, sir? Your Honor, you of all people should understand the importance of being first.
How's that, Mrs. Jackson?
Well, you were the first in your family to serve in the armed forces, U.S. Navy, the first to attend university, George Mason, and the first state judge to be recommissioned by 3 consecutive governors.
You've done some research.
Yes, sir.
What's the point?
The point is, Your Honor, no Negro woman in the state of Virginia has ever attended an all-white high school. It's unheard of.
Yeah, unheard of.
And before Alan Shepard sat on top of a rocket, no other American had ever touched space. And now he will forever be remembered as the U.S. Navy man from New Hampshire, the first to touch the stars. And I, sir, I plan on being an engineer at NASA. But I can't do that without taking them classes at that all-white high school. And I can't change the color of my skin. So I have no choice but to be the first, which I can't do without you, sir. Your Honor, out of all the cases you're gonna hear today, which one is gonna matter 100 years from now? Which one is gonna make you the first?
Only the night classes, Mrs. Jackson.
Great clip.
Great scene.
All right, so
Great.
go ahead.
Keep going.
Well, I was just going to say, we're going to close out. Some of this session was, of course, inspired by Never Split the Difference. And, we want to direct you to go to that website, read the founding material. There's a lot of stuff in there. There's a lot of great stuff in there. And going further, you've got the Monarch Management Power Up series, and then relevant topics. This work, for those of you who have read Crucial Conversations, there was a lot of similarities to that work, and also 5 dysfunctions of a team.
All right. Any questions from anybody?
So using this framework can help you understand which context you're in so that you can be better prepared and avoid any personally preferred negotiation techniques. Essentially, there are new rules to negotiation. How we do this and how we go about it, hopefully you'll leverage the tools from this session today. And like I said, delve deeper into the founding work.
It's contextual. It's not a one size fits all. There's just so much. We want to put a lot of importance on that. Find the things that work for you and for your style so that they can feel authentic. But you also have to push yourselves a little bit to move into some areas that may feel a little bit more unusual. And then start to practice on some low stakes scenarios in your life so that you're more equipped when you get to those high stakes scenarios.
And when it gets to the high stakes scenarios, I think if we try to give you any other tip, be prepared. Go into that being prepared so you're not emotionally hijacked during this. And of course, here's our contact information. Feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to hear what you thought about the presentation, the styles, the exercise. So we'd love to hear from you.